Following program are pre-recorded.
Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken along with Lori Hintz from Beck News. You can go to beck.tv plus stuff. Yeah. Okay, I haven't done this for a while.
Beck TV, I know, right? Beck TV plus. Yeah.
Because I had an election and they can't be on the air, I guess, when you're having... Anyway, so...
Good to have you back, though.
Yeah, so, all right, and thank you for Jason for filling in because you and Jason had some great conversations.
Yes, we did.
And tell you what, I like being gone sometimes because it gives a different perspective and people ask different questions. So I think it's good for the audience and the listeners to get a different perspective on things. All right, so...
We had some elections.
We had this election thing. And not that I like him because I hate him, but which hate's a strong word, but I don't think strong enough in this case. Stephen Colbert, the day after, was like, did something happen yesterday?
Oh, man.
A
tectonic shift.
I got to watch it over the weekend because I actually set my DVR and recorded The View on Wednesday morning.
On purpose? I think you and everybody else did.
I got to watch that.
They got their best ratings ever because everybody wanted to see the car crash. So, Okay, so one request, and I know you've got connections as the state party woman. National committee woman.
If there is any way whatsoever to maybe put a bug in somebody's ear about a cabinet position, please, Lord, let Joe Rogan be the press secretary. Please. One Christmas present. That's all I want Joe Rogan as Trump's press secretary. That would be the best press secretary ever in the history of press secretaries.
Even if he just did it for 3 months, just to chew up and spit out the press corps, right?
It would be so entertaining.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my one little wish from this. All right, I digress. But there's a lot that has gone on from and here's my takeaway from the election. Everything aside, and I don't care that Trump won. I don't care that Trump got the electoral college because I know what the argument was going to be. It was the popular vote.
It was the popular vote.
That
was a big deal.
That's what pulled the rugs out of the liberals. That's when, sorry, because the conversation was already teed up. It's like, and we have to get rid of their electoral college. No,
and they just destroyed
you got your asses handed to you because you left your base. You left your constituents. You do not have what you think you've been. I was watching a comedian over the weekend, and just like everybody, as per our Constitution, has a seat at the table. And the comedian was, I don't think most people get up in the morning and the first thing that they think about is, I wonder if the LGBTQ community is okay this morning. You know what? They're Americans like everybody else.
It's the economy, stupid.
And we should all be equal.
It's the economy, stupid.
That's not the messaging from the left. It was
really, really poorly done. That was a terribly mismanaged campaign.
Did you read the article? I believe it was last Thursday that came out in the New York Times. Because I was watching I
generally do not try to read the New York Times.
Okay, but this summed it up completely. Because I'm watching all the different Democratic pundits trying to... it wasn't damage control or it wasn't spin. They were trying to go through and go, okay, what happened? And digest that. And it was the popular vote that really pushed them over the edge. But, most of them have realized that, the messaging wasn't right. The messaging wasn't connected to people who cared about the economy.
Beyonce.
Yeah.
I mean, really?
People that you have nothing to do with a dock worker in Texas or a production...
Well, those are no longer their constituents.
A production line worker in Detroit.
Yep.
You just don't. And the New York Times article came back to basically, and I'm paraphrasing, and this is the reason the Democrats lost, Kamala Harris lost, because they did a poor job of connecting to people who are not as connected to how evil Trump was. down the stretch.
That was their only talking point.
Wait a minute. If you can't learn that this is a teachable moment.
This is a good thing. I mean, this is
a teachable moment. And you know where I'm at with supermajorities. I like that we're close like this on a national level. Mm-hmm. I wish we were a little closer on a state level. It's good for people. It's good for taxpayers. It's good to have a discussion back and forth. You don't want it way out of whack. Things work best in equilibrium. I will always say that. And I think we're out of equilibrium in North Dakota. Mm-hmm. But that was the message from the New York Times. Like, y'all didn't learn.
Nope.
You didn't learn.
Which is good for the Republicans because that means that they're going to probably double down. That's what the...
All right, I have to ask you a question because maybe my second Christmas gift 4 years from now...
Do you have somebody J.D. Vance?
It's going to be hard to beat a Vance Tulsi Gabbard ticket.
Uh-huh.
It would be really hard to beat a Vance Tulsi Gabbard
ticket. You're not
because you got to remember, Trump goes in right now as a lame duck. Mm-hmm. I mean...
Yeah.
House, Senate, he's got the horses. But in all honesty, your second term as a president, you kind of start out a little bit with that lame duck mentality. And he only gets one term.
Right.
To go fix everything that got screwed up over the last 4 years.
How fast things are going to be. Oh. They're already moving.
They're already moving. Mm-hmm. They're already moving.
Yep.
So... yeah, it's so...
It just seems like the GOP this time around was a little better prepared for almost everything. For
the ground game was better.
For
the early
voting, they were better. The lawfare, way better prepared this time around. And anything on Election Day that was going on was taken care of, snapped up and dispatched and taken care of immediately. So I think the preparation was so much better all around. The leadership of the RNC changing was tectonic. Huge change.
That was huge.
And the reason it was important
and you and a lot of people behind the scenes have been professing to this for a long time that's where the problem lies.
Yes.
And apparently it did.
Yes. And what happened was the new leadership installed then, what they did is they embraced the ground game people who could do that outside of they themselves. And rather than eschewing and marginalizing people like Scott Pressler and Cliff Maloney, they embraced them, they partnered with them, and that's why everything works so smoothly.
Well, so look who Trump for his chief of staff. It's like
Susie Wiles.
Florida ground game.
Mm-hmm.
Florida ground game.
Yeah, a grandma.
He went back
picked a grandma.
to where's the foundation, who's connected to the constituents.
And he's also a lot more in tune with who is trusted and who is loyal now. And those things, trusted and loyal, absolutely describes Susie Wiles.
Great example last time. It's like Pence's VP. That was a compromise to placate the Republican Party and the old guard that was in charge of the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. That wasn't Trump's pick for VP. That was, well, how do I make the Republican establishment happy? Because, and don't get me wrong, but, and I'm as conservative as you can be, but whether you're in the Republican camp or the Democratic camp, the establishment comes back to a lot of the same. So his plan to already drain the swamp, which he talked about it last time, but now he actually can make some strides in that.
I'm watching the Senate leadership race now.
Oh, yeah.
Really important.
Tell you what, let's talk about that when we come back. Okay. We got so much to talk about this morning. Oh, by the way, there's this Summit pipeline thing. And something might have happened in South Dakota, which is really
pretty big stuff happened in South Dakota as well.
I'm Steve Boggan along with Lori Hintz. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 20. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Boggan along with Lori Hintz from Beck News. You can go to becktv.plus, follow all things Beck, and including some Carbon Solutions proposed CO2 pipeline. But there was this little election thing last week. We're kind of fleshing through some of that.
Well, it does have an effect on everything that's going to be happening with this too. So.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about was, okay, the Republicans have the Senate. The Republican Senate leadership is really a point of discussion within circles right now. Mm-hmm. And is it going to be something fresh and new or something old and stagnant?
Last
is it going to be established?
There were 3 running for the position.
Well, and South Dakota Senator Thune is one of them.
Correct. And then you've got John Cornyn from Texas, and then you've got Rick Scott from Florida. Oh my goodness. And he's the MAGA of the guys. He's the guy who is not the old guard.
So how much influence is Trump going to have in that decision?
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
Oh, and speaking of Senate races.
He's staying out of it, and get this. And Cornyn and Thune are publicly saying, Trump shouldn't really have anything to do with any of this decision. I'm like, oh, right.
Really?
Listen, if you don't think that he just got a mandate, then you better need to shut your pie hole because...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it took him a while, but I would say the culture of the Republican Party has changed. Now, if you're going to clean out the swamp...
Get on the team.
Yeah. And are you going to... And I think that one statement probably hurt Thune more than anything else, is that he shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Because if you're embracing, hey, we would love the input of the president for...
Get on the team. Yeah. Be on the team.
And the
House is. Yeah. Speaker Johnson is running and re-upping again. So
speaking of Senate races, Montana, Tester out
of. Oh yeah, she beat him. Yeah,
and Tim over there, who's now the senator elect, is just a younger version of J.D. Vance.
Yep.
Another military guy, another rock star in the making. You mentioned this in the last segment. Mm-hmm. The Republican bench is looking pretty damn good right now.
It really is. You've got the win in Pennsylvania for McCormick. You've got all of these really big races that were decided by, just a few points in many places, but man, what a mandate. I just can't even wrap my head around it really yet, even after, a full week. It's really going to be incumbent on the Republicans to get their poop in a group collectively.
One of the other discussion points too is Trump's cabinet. We talked a little bit about chief of staff, but, one of the names that has been popped up because I think he inserted himself in that, was our globalist governor, Doug Burgum, whose name is still popping up as a potential cabinet position.
There was a Politico piece that came out on October 19th, and it was very instructive. During the reading of it, I noticed something that just came up a couple of different times. First of all, what they did in this Politico piece is they were surmising, even at that time, if Trump were to win, because it was before the election, who would be in line for various picks for, various things. So the article says Doug Burgum, the North Dakota governor, was floated as a potential Trump pick for vice president or interior secretary earlier in the year. And
can we make him ambassador to Moldova? Maybe?
And his job,
that wouldn't be very fair to Moldova.
As an energy state governor puts him in a good position for the job. Politico reported. North Dakota is the 3rd largest oil producing state.
Okay, energy state governor, but nothing to do with energy. Okay.
So Burgum himself has heaped praise on Harold but Burgum seems to be hoping for a post with a bigger profile, such as Secretary of State, the article said.
Hell no.
So we'll see what happens there. Energy Secretary under Trump would serve as a measure of his commitment to the fossil fuel industry. But I do have a little inside baseball on that one because the chairman...
It is Moldova.
Well, no.
Darn.
No, but the chairman of the RNC is a man named Michael Whatley. Michael Whatley is very well known for his stances on energy issues in North Carolina, and he has expressed an interest in energy secretary. Seems to me that the job that he did in getting Donald Trump elected would probably merit a look. So that is another possibility for energy secretary. It would be Michael Whatley.
And Whatley's connection is more the mechanics around energy rather than the production of. So when you start talking about the transmission line stuff and how things need to be connected and how portfolios need to be balanced and the operational. That's where his talent lies.
Now, this article also under the section of Energy Secretary, this political article from the 19th of October says Trump, who has called climate change a hoax, is promising to claw back any unspent money Biden secured in the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act and could potentially slow down the pace of loans and grant making. So that's interesting. An additional opinion piece that came out after the election came out on the 6th, and this was in a publication called Business Green, and it's an article written by James Murray, and this is, again, opinion. It is titled, Trump's Victory is a Blow to Global Climate Action, but it's not a knockout. It's no knockout, it says. Everything has changed and nothing has changed. Donald Trump's victory, in the end, completed by a comfortable margin, will now tear like a hurricane through U.S. and global climate efforts, James Murray writes for Business Green. Comforting assumptions about the inevitability of progressive values, the strength of NATO, and the primacy of liberal democracy will be demolished in its wake.
Oh, not democracy. Liberal democracy.
That's right. And little later in the article, I highlighted something. It says governments and businesses will once again reach out to work with the U.S. states that continue to advance American decarbonization efforts throughout Trump's first term. The Chinese government has an explicit strategy to ensure this is China's century, and dominance of booming global clean tech markets is critical to that goal. It is not about to tear up that plan because of a trade war with the U.S. And then it goes on later to say the threat Trump poses to global climate efforts comes not from the direct impact he will have by rowing back on U.S. decarbonization policies, and more from the indirect impact he could have if his isolationist philosophy and volatile personality trigger a full-blown economic crisis, or worse still, a major conflict. That was an interesting statement to me.
The major conflict of the liberal side, because they're the ones that are big proponents, because I don't think we had a conflict under Trump.
Zero
before.
Conflicts.
Yeah, and how many now? A lot.
So like multiple.
Okay, so my takeaway on that, though, is like, really? You got your undies in a bunch because clean energy in the form of traditional energy sources, coal, gas, natural gas, oil, and the clean production of those versus the dirty production of a new, dirty, unfettered coal-fired power plant coming online in China or India every day, without the environmental side of it, without the clean component, build those in the U.S. and produce it cleanly, or build them somewhere else and make the U.S. do green things. And
yeah,
so
I thought that was a really interesting article, too. I thought it the same way. It totally missed the mark with me because it was spewing some, liberal.
Spewing, but not here, there.
Yep.
This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
The Talk lineup is on Super Talk 1270. Check out the program schedule at supertalk1270.com and on the free Super Talk 1270 app. Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken along with Lori Hintz from Beck News. You can go to BeckTV.plus, follow all things Summit Carbon Solutions proposed CO2 pipeline. We're going to get back to that in just a few minutes.
Well, we talked about the implications on the national level.
Well, and now we're going to start talking about local level.
And the states, too.
Look for something coming out from the Public Service Commission very soon because, well, Randy Crispin got reelected, so now there's no waves to...
Right, so they selected, of course...
You got to remember, this is the only statewide elected position in North Dakota that's an incumbent has never lost.
Yeah, and it's 6 years long. It's a 6-year term.
The incumbent has never
everything
lost.
Else is more 2 or 4 years or things like that.
Yeah.
So, but voters selected the chair of the 3-person North Dakota Public Service Commission to serve another term. It was 70% to 30%. Republican Randy Crispin defeated Democratic NPL challenger Tracy Wilkie in that election, and
I think that's I legitimately think that's part of the reason we haven't heard anything from the Public Service Commission on a decision yet.
Yeah,
they were waiting for the election to be over.
Well, he voted against a permit for the Summit Pipeline project last year, but the PSC agreed, of course, to let Summit revise its application, and another vote is expected soon. And we're just waiting on the announcement at this point too. Probably not on a holiday on Veterans Day, but it'll probably be very soon. He's a rancher, of course, from the Hazen area. Didn't indicate which way he was leaning before the election, as he should. You know, he should recuse himself from speaking, at least of it. And that
if you
way,
think about it,
and he did. He's always been really good about that.
Yes, and full disclosure, I consider Randy a friend, but of all the positions in North Dakota for elected positions that are partisan, nonpartisan, if you think about it, Public Service Commission really should be a nonpartisan position because you're making decisions for all of North Dakota. And the Public Service Commission, and
I've always wondered that too. Well, they do that with DPI, which is a nonpartisan one, supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly.
Again, right?
But if you take a look at, and this is where now Senator Kramer, when previous program I used to have him on very regularly, and he embraced it, was because he understood, and I understood the importance to, if you're a resident, taxpayer, citizen of North Dakota, the Public Service Commission has way more sway than anybody thinks, because something in your life they touch an aspect of. Public Service Commission is important. It's Industrial Commission, Public Service Commission to me. Those are the two that are very important. If you live in North Dakota, they affect your lives directly. Election night,
Jeff Beach from the North Dakota Monitor put this article out about Chrisman winning, and in it he noted that the PSC has siting authority over the pipeline that would move carbon emissions from ethanol plants in 5 states to a permanent underground storage area in central North Dakota. He also mentioned in the article at the end that Chrisman was first elected to the PSC in 2012, which is 12 years ago. So he served 2 terms already. This will be his 3rd term. He was reelected in 2018. Republicans hold all 3 seats on the commission presently.
All right, so let's go to the other big election news, and this is not North Dakota.
No, and this is a big deal.
Way, congratulations to Kelly Armstrong.
Yes, and there's that too. We're real happy for him. South Dakota is it's been very volatile in South Dakota, but South Dakota had passed a bill, and this law was deemed the Landowner Bill of Rights, which was a misnomer.
But you can call it anything you want. It was anything but.
Exactly. And so landowners delivered a huge blow to Summit Carbon Solutions with the vote on Election Day on the 5th of November, because the proposed $8.9 billion carbon capture pipeline that has polarized the U.S. Corn Belt has hit another setback in the critical state of South Dakota, says a Bloomberg article. At least 60% of South Dakotans voted to repeal a law critics say was meant to ease approval of the project by Summit Carbon Solutions, according to preliminary results of a statewide ballot done on Tuesday's election. The project is the last high-profile carbon pipeline proposal still standing after rivals with similar versions went bust amid opposition from landowners in various Midwestern states. So this is a mandate from the voters that South Dakota is not for sale, according to Carla Lems, Republican state lawmaker. She voted against the law earlier this year, and she told Bloomberg, they understand that our property rights are sacred and that the legislature got it wrong. So now we have to move forward to enact much needed protections. Summit Carbon told Bloomberg it is not deterred by the ballot results and plans to reapply for a state permit, and they gave a specific date, November 19th. So next week, they will be reapplying in South Dakota. Summit has faced a barrage of setbacks since the project was announced in 2021, with the pipeline delayed by at least 2 years, and estimated costs more than doubling. South Dakota last year rejected Summit Carbon's plan to capture emissions from corn ethanol production because the planned route violated county ordinances, such as distances between the pipelines and homes. Opponents call
South Dakota actually pays attention to
yes,
county
they
ordinances?
do. Go figure. Wow. Okay, so the final kicker in this is that this is really interesting. The fight to keep the law intact spurred a political campaign that blanketed vote yes ads across the state, with South Dakota-based Poet, LLC, the world's biggest corn ethanol producer, contributing at least $1 million to the cause, according to filings. Abolishing the law likely makes it harder for Summit Carbon to get approval, especially after several incumbent state lawmakers who backed the law and pipeline were defeated earlier this year in Republican primaries. So they've got different people in the legislature now, too. Now, add that to the other story that I read. Yeah.
My one caveat with this is, and this comes back to how short-term memory people have, because there was, at the primary, a lot of those Republicans that supported that were primaried out.
Right.
Will that momentum change on the next cycle, or will that momentum continue that we need a change because these people are not the ones representing private property and landowner rights?
Right. A great question about that, too.
Hopefully they remember that, and that role keeps going.
So while this very contentious referred law, RL 21, was going on in South Dakota, the season that led up to the election included some really interesting facts, like, for instance, that massive lobbying effort from Summit Carbon Solutions included a spending of over $3 million to back this referred law 21 carbon capture and storage CCS scheme, they say in Pipeline Fighters Hub. But the Mitchell Now says in an article, Dakota Rural Action is a South Dakota-based organization that's been engaged in a multi-year campaign to ensure, and they did some pre-election ads I'd love to tell you about.
All right, we're going to talk about those ads, because one of the things that I think they had done, which sounds awfully liberal of them, was misinformation and confusing people. And I want to come back and talk about that. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270. Talk of the Town. Weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app.
Now you can listen 1270 on Alexa.
Hiya.
Find out how at supertalk1270.com.
Goodbye.
Portions of the following program are pre-recorded.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken, along with Eric Grabowski, former Associate Professor of Communications over at Dickinson State University. Eric, it's been a while. Thanks for coming back on.
Happy to be back, and I am going to just mention for this week, Happy Veterans Day, which is Monday of this week. By the time this is out there, and Happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans in any capacity that they served.
All right, I want to start in with Dickinson State University. Of course, Veterans Day was Monday, and everybody, I hope you had an opportunity to thank a veteran. And you know what? You don't need a day to do that. You can do that at any time. I do want to start with Dickinson State University, because we haven't had an update for a while, and they've had some interesting things going on. Interim president, presidential search, and a little backstory on the history of this. This goes back to well, I'm going to ask your opinion, because I don't think it was completely in good faith, some of the negotiation with the nursing program. And the history of DSU goes back a little bit further than that, but I think that was kind of the trigger point, wasn't it?
It was. It really was the culmination of almost everything since about 2020. And we've covered so much on this program, and we covered this summer pretty much in the lead up to the fallout and the fallout itself. So, yes, in my view, and I always say my well-informed view, that the Dickinson State University administration at the time and the Chancellor, Hagerott, who is pretty much a lame duck, did not adequately deal with that nursing faculty situation, and things could have ended much differently than it did. So they were left with a major gap that basically Mayville State University and DSU have had to pull things together in terms of maintaining some semblance of a nursing program, and then some discussion of looking toward the future, and we can talk more about what that may look like. But basically what has happened, it was the intention of the chancellor and the board by the end of September to have in place an interim president at DSU, and of course before then Ty Orton, the DSU Heritage Foundation head, was put in as acting president. However, North Dakota Monitor reported on this, and that basically the state board decided, and aspects of this were in executive session, so we don't know every detail, but they basically came out of executive session and decided to name Ty as the ongoing acting president, and that has continued. It's going to have to be on a month-to-month basis. And they punted. They did not name an interim president, and so then they moved to a plan to move forward on the search. We could talk more about what that looks like. So that's where we are now. The nursing situation is challenging from different things we hear publicly and sort of in different loops. There are opportunities in the future for growth and regrowth. That depends on the quality of DSU leadership. But there's no guarantees, as I've said before.
All right, I want to back up because there's a lot to unpack there. First and foremost, we are at such a crisis and shortage when it comes to healthcare providers. That's why the Dickinson State University's story with the nursing program is as big a story as it is. We need nurses. We need a lot of nurses. How's that program working for DSU students? Are they getting a lot of that education online? Are they getting or having to travel to Mayville State? What is that program currently looking like for those students?
So my understanding of it is right now aspects of it are going as planned, as best as possible in terms of basically at a faculty administration level, it being governed by two faculty from Mayville in cooperation with, DSU administration. And then in terms of what is available to students either locally in terms of, adjunct faculty, and then online learning that may loop back to Mayville or elsewhere. So there's a gap at DSU in terms of having enough full-time faculty, and they may have hired a few full-time faculty on a now basis to handle certain things. But there are gaps. Again, there are challenges for the students that were in the programs that have decided to stay. My understanding is they're getting what they can to move forward in their programs, while then DSU now is navigating what the future is going to look like in terms of nursing programming at DSU.
Okay, I want to come back a little bit to other programs as well, because Dickinson seems to have had struggles over the last several decades of putting all the pieces together in a way moving forward, because there's been little, I'll call them kerfuffles. There's been little hiccups and bumps in the road that have been part administration, part past presidents. Just everything's not been on the same page. There's been a disconnect. Is that what this delay with trying to find the right president may be? Because putting somebody in place that's been part of the establishment to a certain degree, I don't know is the long-term future for fixing some of the other ills at the institution, because that's what the long-term goal should be, is for the best outcome of the students, fixing the integral problems within the institution. Are you getting a sense that that's what they're trying to focus on, is making sure they have the right president for the right fit to make some changes? And I'll throw back to Dr. Jensen, which there weren't problems at Bismarck State College, but a new vision going forward for North Dakota's Polytechnic. That's what Dr. Jensen brought in. Is that kind of what they're looking for in a long-term solution as leadership for Dickinson State?
My opinion, and again, keep in mind, we don't know everything that was discussed in the September executive session, but my opinion is they probably punted on the interim president decision, because they probably felt that the candidates in the poll, which included one internal what I'd call regime candidate from DSU, and then 3 external candidates probably weren't fitting the bill for what they thought at the time was the best path forward. So it was a comfortable choice with Ty. And in terms of calming and sort of short-term direction, Ty can probably be okay along those lines. And then now that they pivoted to a more expedited view of that presidential search, one definitely gets the sense that there is a possibility of calibrating or recalibrating direction. And they better, because as I tell people about any program, in my view, that whether people are talking about the future of the nursing program or any program at DSU, the board and the chancellor of the NDUS are going to have to get serious about, again, here I go again, leadership matters. What are they going to put in place? And it's not just the president; it's what the next president aligns in terms of other administrators at DSU. Right? What's going to be the future direction? There's a lot on the Dickinson State website. You can contact them, dickinsonstate.edu. They've started to post about the scope and nature of the presidential search in cooperation, of course, with the NDUS and State Board.
Eric, we're up against the break. Eric, we're up against the break. I want to come back and continue that in the bigger picture with the State Board of Higher Education as well. This is Talk of the Town. We're talking with Eric Grabowski, former Associate Professor of Communications at Dickinson State University on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken, along with Eric Grabowski, DSU former Associate Professor of Communications. We're talking about the state of Dickinson State University and what that looks, bigger picture. I want to step back a little bit and look bigger picture, because I think there's an opportunity. Ty is currently the, not interim president, but they're going through the search process. But a lot of this, for me, comes back to higher ed and some vacancies on the board, the status of Chancellor Hagerott. I think there's some one foot in front of the other that needs to take place before DSU can get straightened out. And I think that is what, under a new governor's administration, Governor Kelly Armstrong elect, what higher ed is going to look like in North Dakota. And a new chancellor, some new members on the board. I think that needs to be figured out first before we can move on to, addressing Dickinson State University or any of the other institutions of higher education in North Dakota. But I think that piece needs to happen first. And that kind of puts DSU in a holding pattern, to me, at least from what I look at the outside looking in, is higher ed needs to be addressed first.
I don't disagree in terms of how we know the political levers work in North Dakota. However, the challenging part of that for the wonderful people of southwestern North Dakota is there's a real, maybe half-solved, maybe not half-solved crisis going on in Dickinson. So, yes, let's hope, and I'm very hopeful with Governor-elect Armstrong, that there may be some breaths of fresh air. But on the other hand, we know there are some challenges both locally in southwestern North Dakota and statewide. And yes, again, leadership matters. That goes to the, not just DSU, but that's to the system and board as a whole too. So I'm hoping in 2025 that there's going to be some renewed vigor in getting people to the table in conversations, as some of my colleagues would encourage in good faith, and former colleagues. And, the tenure discussion, the tenure ad hoc committee, the board, and again, North Dakota Monitor has done some good reporting on this, that by March, the board is going to get a deadline going for institutions to come up with plans for post-tenure review. Obviously, that was prompted by HB 1446. We don't have to relive all that. But I hope as those sorts of discussions happen, that those aren't just covering mechanisms for other agendas and pushing back against pushback, all the stuff we've talked about. It's going to be a real leadership challenge going forward. Okay,
and I wasn't even thinking about the tenure discussion, because that's sitting on the table right now, and that's kind of in a little bit of a pause. Yep. You've got that committee going forward, but a lot of that's going to come back to what's the state of the higher education board in North Dakota. What are some of the other things on the table? Because we've had this discussion for a long time about, there's the haves and have-nots, there's UND and NDSU, and there's everybody else. And we've got, depending on who you talk to, either too many or not enough institutions of higher education in North Dakota. I think the board is at a crossroads right now of reinventing, or at least having to look at reinventing what the landscape of higher education in North Dakota looks like. Now, at BSC, and kudos to President Jensen in reimagining a new path for BSC, and I was the mayor at the time and kind of walked through a lot of that with him legislatively and what that looked like, going, hey, we need to carve out our own niche here and go our own direction. And BSC has done a great job getting on that road. And that was fraught with a lot of roadblocks because that's not the way we've always done it. What do you see the biggest issues with the Board of Higher Education, or that reinvention of the State Board of Higher Education, looking like? The tenure is one big piece. The number of higher ed institutions is another. The missions of those institutions are another. I think the two 800-pound gorillas in the room, UND and NDSU, they're going to do what they do. But as far as all these other institutions of higher learning in North Dakota, a little insight, Eric, on what you think the struggles or the issues that are going to have to be addressed with a new board of higher education, a new chancellor, some new members, a new administration. What I'm asking you to put on your Karnak hat and do a little prognostication.
So let's start with the preliminary to that. Let's go back to our June conversation. What I don't know, and I'll try to assess a little bit better as we get close to the legislative session, with all the DSU hype and some of the other, to the extent that had board and NDUS level impact, I don't know what has happened to that wish list that we discussed in the summer once or twice. And I also don't know, for instance, remember the whole Train ND discussion, was there going to be an expansion into more quadrants or more segments, and would Dickinson be part of that? So what we need to assess going into the session is with the current sort of political leadership dynamic, how much has that shifted in the last 3 or 4 months? That's number one. Number two, going into the new session and then into a phase where we will have a new board, and then, of course, still a lame-duck chancellor for a bit, how are they going to navigate that transition? Because vision is the issue, right? So there has to be everyone at the table assessing, thinking about what are our human and other resources in North Dakota that are going to enable us as resident citizens of North Dakota to have the best education possible. So, you know me, I'm always saying get back to the basics, while at the same time being attentive to workforce. So again, let's encourage them to what we talked about, back in June, a more locally driven focus on workforce. Yes? Things where it can be not always so top down, but maybe ground up in collaboration then with leadership to think, what are those workforce needs regionally that we can support through some of the traditional programs and then innovate along the way? That's clearly what BSC is doing. They're on the move, right? Yeah, university and college PR sometimes is a little bit of flam and hype, but in BSC situation, they're doing real things and they're rightly publicizing them.
We're talking with Eric Grabowski, a former associate professor of communications at Dickinson State University. I want to come back to that local workforce piece, because if you're going to talk about that, then you're also having to roll in DPI and the CTEs and what those look like as a precursor to the workforce issues with education. So I want to come back to that when we come back after the break. I'm Steve Bach, and this is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken, along with Eric Grabowski, Associate Professor of Communications, formerly at Dickinson State University. And we're talking about DSU, what the future of the Board of Higher Education, the Chancellor's Office, all that looks like, and the future of education in North Dakota. Last segment, you brought up localized workforce and addressing that, and that's probably the future role of the School of Science down in Wahpeton, BSC with the Polytechnic Mission, Williston, because you mentioned the Train ND, and that all lends itself to what's going on with DPI as well, and that is the CTEs, the career academies that we have. That model started here in Bismarck. Are we looking at higher ed and DPI having to be on the same page for some of these workforce issues? You take the foundation for an education in higher ed at the high school level. I don't think that model's completely fleshed out yet. And then you throw in the Train ND. It's like there's three legs to this stool, Eric, and they're not all on the same page yet. But we need to get there if you're going to talk about local or localized workforce development.
Yeah, and this is a good time actually to be ringing the bell for this as we get closer to the legislative session, because not an experienced politician, not a lawyer, but I've lived here long enough to see that there are political pieces that would need to be put into place to get people collaborating and cooperating to do that localist approach that would be, again, driven by local regional needs and, of course, facilitated by higher ed leadership and so forth. So we would definitely need to get the constituents and players in place. So this may be something that in the legislative session that may need to have some legislative guidance and funding to do it right, exploratory or whatever. And now's the time to talk about it, maybe also with Governor-elect Armstrong on the way, because I think this is going to be, instead of just people getting notions on what needs to be done, the next fad, it really assesses and evaluates at a local level what are those workforce needs. As we've talked about before, there are certain things that are always going to be on the table, like nursing or whatnot, but there may be other things that are different in the southwest part of the state or eastern Montana or, northwest South Dakota versus on the eastern side of the state where, the other institutions could serve other roles for that region. So I think now is the time to initiate that conversation, and then that will free up opportunities for higher ed to really think about getting back to basics in the college and university programming that's always going to be important.
One other layer I want to throw on this, too, from a reinvention of, or I don't want to call it repurposing, but just a revisioning of what higher ed looks like in North Dakota, because we have two predominant research institutions in NDSU and UND. They're tasked with the research side. They go out and generate revenue through some of the work that their professors do, and they have programs associated with that, and that's a great role for them. Yeah. If you were taking some of the things off the table or off of their plate, because, I take a look at UND. It's, why is there education there? Why are we training teachers there? That would be a great role at Mayville. Or some of the things that are at NDSU. It's like, okay, take some of those things off the plate. Would that open up other avenues for bringing research dollars into the state?
Could, and I'll mention the other side of that coin, too. There have been, sometimes formally, sometimes informally, research collaborations that happen where maybe there are some faculty at NDSU or UND, and maybe at the 4 years, or even on occasion the 2 years, they might know some folks through past schooling or conferences that participate with them, and sometimes that gets more formalized through more groups of faculty doing grants. That happens in the sciences for sure, but in other areas. And then, yes, on the teaching side, there may be things that are more appropriate for the medium-sized 4 years and the 2 years to be handling that maybe shouldn't. And I don't want to speak for certainly for UND or NDSU, but certainly something they should evaluate. There are some things that could be shifted elsewhere.
All right, so when you're looking at I'm going to put you on the spot right here. Do you think, because we've got, 13 institutions of higher education in the state?
So we have 11 state institutions, then 3 private schools, right?
3, yes. Are they all warranted? Do we need them all?
So I'm on the spot here. I'm going to say the best I'm going to say on that is if we assess if there's a need there's probably some things we're doing too much of.
Because they cost a lot of money.
We're not doing enough of.
They cost a lot of money.
And so as we talked about, I think it was in June, if we're going to scale down, and I'm not going to pick a number, I just would want to make sure that we have vigorous local conversations that say, okay, and as you mentioned, we can't just pull the rug out of an area. We have to think about the ways in which we may keep something going in an area versus a lot, to make sure that area's economic growth continues. And if we make those tough choices at some point collectively in the next 5-10 years, that maybe we could find some other ways to keep that education going.
Eric, as far as the Board of Higher Education, some of the other issues, is there anything else that you see on the horizon that needs to be tackled or needs to be addressed when it comes to a new chancellor, new members on the board, anything else that they need to look at right now?
Yes, and again, to me, this is connected to vision. I also don't want to say that this has only been a problem with Chancellor Hagerott, so I don't want to seem like I'm singling him out, but my observation living here now for just over working for the system for just over 14 years and living here longer is, or just under 14 years working, is to say that we have to find a way in North Dakota, and I'm sure this is a problem in other states too, is to respect the proper political dynamics that the Constitution and the people have asked for higher ed, but we have to put in or follow our checks and balances to make sure that influence peddling and problematic political influence and allegations of targeting and those sorts of things aren't in the mix, because that has not been helpful. As you know, it's no secret that I thought and with good reason, the whole tenure thing, and we've talked about this, was more about silencing people who were raising real governance concerns versus authentic tenure reform.
We're talking with Eric Grabowski, former associate professor of communications at Dickinson State University. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
1270. Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach, along with Brad Ogg, General Manager of Runnings, the Cool Running, 701 South Washington in Bismarck. And, this past weekend, my wife and I were making lefse because it's Christmas, holiday, Thanksgiving, baking season, and Runnings has got, if you're putting nuts in things and all the supplies, you got it all. You got everything you need.
Yeah, so this is a good stock up week right now. We have all the whole walnuts, the walnut pieces, cashews, the different types of, like, what they got going on out there, peanut brittles and those little marshmallow charms and seeds this and seeds that. We got all that little baking stuff from Eileen's on sale right now. And it's about $3.99 a pound on some of that stuff. So really good pricing. And then if you want snack mixes for the tables, you got the Southwest mix, you got the tropical mix, country mix, cheesy trail mix, all sorts of fun little snack things you can do. And those are all $3.99 as well. So they're running a really good sale right now on some of that holiday snack baking stuff.
You know, you mentioned the peanut brittle, and he admitted he didn't make it himself, but Kev did bring me peanut brittle last week when you weren't here. So I kind of enjoyed that, and I have to admit, I did offer once around the office, and then I didn't share anymore. I killed it. I just crushed it.
Well, I bet that was really loud crunching into on the microphone.
It was. It really was. So, not nearly as quiet as jerky.
No, just subtle smacks with the jerky.
You know, one of the other things you've got going on right now is DeWalt, tools still on sale. I mean, it seems like you guys go back and forth, and you have such a great relationship with your vendors that allows you guys to basically do some kick butt sales, and something's always on sale. It just depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, so we got the DeWalt sale going on now, and yeah, we are. We always run it back and forth between Milwaukee and DeWalt, it seems like. Each one wants to do their big sale. Right now it's DeWalt through the end of December. So you got plenty of time to come in and check out the DeWalt sale. I mean, it's just, there's some really good deals with battery promotion. So if you're first getting into DeWalt and you want to, or you're first getting on the 20 volt and you're getting out of the 18 volt, you're going to get all those free batteries with those bare tool purchases, which is a huge savings for people who are trying to switch in. That's the expensive part of getting into this part of tools, are all the batteries and accessories that you need to go with them. And now you get free batteries, free chargers, free toolboxes, free flashlights. They got socket sets with the impact wrench. They got blades with some of the saws, and they're just doing all sorts of things with the DeWalt sale this time. And the flyer is ginormous. I think it's like 8 to 10 pages. I don't have one in front of me here. I was looking for one, but it's just huge.
You know, the storage components with DeWalt as well, and the Milwaukee also, but DeWalt's on sale right now. And my wife yells at me all the time for clean up the garage. Well, you don't spend time in the garage. You can park your car in there and the rest of it's mine. But she's always like, well, put this away and put that away. And having the storage pieces so you have somewhere to put that stuff, world of difference. Absolutely world of difference.
And they're running that tough system. So DeWalt's got the tough system. Milwaukee's got the pack out. And they're really cool. You can get a base piece that's got wheels, and you can stack and build however you please. If you want to do organizing trays, if you want drawer units, if you want toolbox units, if you want units that have lights or charging units and platforms with wheels, you name whatever you want, and these two brands have it built into their workstation, portable workstation units.
So did you look at the forecast this morning?
I did.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to go to the Home of Economy store on Wednesday.
Which one?
I go to Minot on Wednesdays.
Oh, well, there could be 8 inches of snow, so you better bring a snowblower.
Yeah. And you know what? And boy, do we have a lot of those on hand. That's a great idea. This is a good time to stock up on snowblowers.
So
I like it.
We may not get a lot of snow here in the Bismarck Mandan area, but you don't have to go too far. And I was looking at 8 inches of accumulation. And if you've thought about buying a snowblower, you need a new one, or you're tired of shoveling, now is the time. You've got some great deals on a great array of snowblowers. You've got something little and compact all the way up to, we need to get through something big. You got it all.
Yeah, and we even have little battery-powered units this year, which is new to us. We saw them in a couple businesses last year, and this year we have our own battery-powered snowblowers.
Yeah, if you're cleaning off a little deck space, those things are, maybe you can't get the big snowblower onto that deck or onto the patio, and you just got to clean a little walkway, or maybe you're like me and grill all winter long, and you got to keep the deck clean so you can grill. Those things are absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and not only that, granted, it's not going to work for 8 inches of snow. But
you got to keep up
if you're
with
going to go out there a couple times, it might work just fine. But some of those, we have the small, probably I would say it's a foot wide, that electric sweeper. We actually have a 2-stage, I believe it's a 2-stage out there, a DeWalt that runs on 260-volt batteries right now.
Absolutely crazy. So make sure you check out the assortment of snowblower because, unfortunately, it is coming. Need the moisture, but it is coming. We do have right around the corner Black Friday also, and I'm going to be joining you on Black Friday doing a big remote. And it's always cool on Black Friday because there's stuff I find that's on sale that I'm like, oh, hey, Wendy, we need this. We have to get this. There's something I didn't know was on sale, but it's on sale because it's Black Friday. Got to get this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so here's the deal. Last year, the safes, that was a rough one. We only had like 4 in for the event, and the rest came later. And it caused some hard feelings. And this year, they got ahead of it, and we got them in September. So they were sitting in the warehouse, taking up space, waiting for this moment. So we are in stock both on the Friday safe and on the safe for Saturday. So there is a good supply on hand sitting for those.
I always tell people, and I don't know why, but Black Friday is the only time to buy a safe for some reason, that's when they are on the Mac Daddy sale. It's Black Friday. So if you're planning on a safe, if you need a safe, which if you get a safe, then that means you can get more guns, or maybe add a safe, you can get more guns, or, well, my wife takes up a shelf, too, of just our personal papers and stuff. But so maybe that's an excuse for me to get another safe.
There you go, a document safe.
Yeah. Well, our gun safe is our document safe. We use them for both.
So, what's nice, and we do have some different things in the ad. I think one of our biggest complaints is we always see the same things in our Black Friday ads. You're always running some of those same specials, and the safe is one of them, but the safe's a big one. This year, they ran a few different deals. There's a new generator they're bringing in. It's a 2,000-watt generator. It's going to be running at about $3,000. Won't give too much there, but we are launching also a new kitchen appliances brand, and they're going to be running some deals. But I say small kitchen appliances. We're talking toasters, small deep fryers, popcorn makers. They're going to run some cool deals there. And then we got a pretty good chocolate deal that we accidentally put on the floor early and started selling through really fast. We realized it was a Black Friday item and it was priced at Black Friday. So to pull it real fast. So if you got some early Black Friday chocolate deals, they'll be back out on Black Friday, and we'll be putting that Ghirardelli chocolate back out for that day.
We'll touch on base a little bit more next week on those. You did mention Home of Economy, and of course, Home of Economy now part of the Runnings family. Brad, have a good one, my friend, and I will talk to you next week.
Hey, appreciate it as always. Thank you.
Brad over at Running 701 South Washington in Bismarck. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town, weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app.